My name is Talmadge Heflin. I'm the Director of the Center for Fiscal Policy at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and we're very glad that you're here this morning. We will be talking about creating jobs in today's economic climate. Texas economy is America's economic engine and responsible for creating more jobs over the past decade than all other states combined. But as you say, there's always room for improvement. So what's tomorrow going to look like? I know if you say, well, we've been successful, so we'll just kind of relax and things will keep going. We know that's not the case. What the panel is going to talk to you about today is what is it that government needs to do in order to have an environment that the private sector can continue to create jobs and hopefully create them at a faster rate than what we've seen in the past. You've heard talk about, if you were here yesterday, heard the governor of Wisconsin talking about how they are interested in overtaking Texas. We've heard the governor of Florida in the months before talk about they are interested in overtaking Texas in the area of job creation. And these people are serious, and those are not the only two states, but there are two formidable competitors, and we think that is good. We think that the more people, the more states that have companies or that attract companies that create jobs, the healthier not only the country is, but the healthier Texas will be. Because we believe in the theory of the rising tide. It brings everybody up. So we have, starting out, we'll have the Honorable Bill Hammond, the CEO of the Texas Association of Business. Bill has led the state's most influential business and chamber organization since April of 1998. Bill, I didn't know you'd been over there that long. Time flies, doesn't it?
That's right.
At TAB, Bill has worked aggressively and successfully to ensure strong pro-business tax and regulatory climates in Texas. Texas Monthly named Bill as one of the top 25 most powerful people in Texas politics. And the one of the things Bill and I have in common is that we both came to the legislature the same year. The election of 1982 carried us there as freshmen in 1983. Bill wised up a whole lot quicker than I did. I didn't have enough sense to get out and had to wait on the voters to throw me out. So, but then following Bill Hammond is Cindy Ramos Davidson, the CEO of the El Paso Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Under her direction, the El Paso Hispanic Chamber of Commerce provides guidance, resources, and the tools needed for the success of the borderline small minority and women-owned businesses. Ms. Davidson also serves as the chairman pro tem of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, the El Paso branch. And then we have, closing us out, is Chairman John Davis. Representative Davis was elected to the Texas legislature to represent District 129 in Harris County in 1998. Representative Davis currently serves as chairman of the House Committee on Economic and Small Business Development and also serves as a member of the House Committee on Energy Resources. Representative Davis is also the person that I was proud to serve with and helped us write a budget in 2003 that closed the $10 billion gap and didn't put too many businesses out of business in this state. We're looking forward to hearing from the panelists, and then after they get through, we're going to take some time so that you may ask questions of them for clarification or just more information or just because you want to ask a question. So with that, Bill Hammond will start us off.
Thank you, Talmadge. I appreciate the opportunity to be with Texas Public Policy Foundation this morning. We certainly consider them to be a extremely valuable partner in all of our efforts to build the best business climate in Texas. That is our mission, to create the best business climate on the planet so that when businesses make a decision about where to expand or where to relocate, the answer will be Texas. It's about bringing good jobs with good wages and benefits to this great state. Because when that happens, we all benefit. Our children benefit, and in my case now, our grandchildren benefit. You know, I consider it to be a very high honor to be the president of the Texas Association of Business and represent the interests of employers before the legislature, Congress, and state agencies. The other evening, I was speaking to my wife, and I said, "Deborah, did you ever think in your wildest dreams that I would be the president of the Texas Association of Business?" Without missing a beat, she turned to me and she said, "Bill, you're not in my wildest dreams." You know, to me, I mean, I'm kind of Johnny One Note. I'll admit to that a little bit. People complain about it sometimes. But to me, Texas has so many wonderful things going for it. And the real question is about education. If we're going to have the jobs and we're going to be able to create jobs, we've got to have a skilled workforce to fill those jobs. We all know that 60+% of the jobs that are being created require some post-secondary degree, certificate, or diploma of some sort. And in Texas today, among the 25 to 35-year-olds, only about 30% of Texans have any post-secondary degree, diploma, or certificate. This compares to a national average of about 42%. And it needs to be 60%. If you look at some of the emerging nations like South Korea, whereas we have the oldsters like Talmadge and well, Talmadge I'm sure is much younger than I am, but the oldsters like, well, probably the oldest person in the room, I guess. I'm looking at y'all, you look very young. But, you know, 55 to 65 in Texas is the best educated. 25 to 35 is the worst educated. South Korea, it's the opposite. And it doesn't bode well for the future of Texas. So we emphasize reform of our educational systems. We emphasize accountability. Now, to those of you, and I see Bill Zedler and some others who hold the high honor of serving in the Texas House, there's only two people that were in the best class of either the 20th or the 21st century here today. That would have been in 1983. And people who work in the legislature and people who are interested and involved, you know, we have to hold our public institutions accountable for their performance. And I get it about legislators being advocates for the institutions back home. I understand that. Maybe they went to A&M, maybe they went to Tech, and you know, maybe they've got a fine institution in their district. And obviously all of them have school districts and in some cases many school districts. And they get it that their job is to be advocates for them. I understand all that. At the same time, I think the equally important role is to hold them accountable for their performance. And we think in far too many cases that performance is lacking. So we're supportive of reforming education, holding educators responsible for their performance. Today in Texas, only about 65% of ninth graders graduate in 4 years. Of those who graduate, only about 25% of the ones who graduate are career or college ready, which is the standard for accountability. And it's not talking about going to UT, it's talking about going to ACC or wherever and getting a certificate, or it's talking about going to work and being able to learn a skill once you're employed. That's the standard that we're using for whether the campuses are performing adequately. Only about 25% of graduates are career or college ready, which means only about 16% of ninth graders in Texas graduate career or college ready in 4 years. That ain't okay. And we think that they can and should do dramatically better than they are doing now. The dropout rate among Hispanics is about 50%, and they're 53% of the student population in Texas. It doesn't work. It doesn't compute. Phil Gramm, maybe some of you all love him and revere him like I do. Maybe some of you don't. But, he talks about the people who are riding in the wagon and those who are pulling the wagon. And in the future in Texas, there are going to be far too many people riding in the wagon unless we improve the productivity and the quality of the public education system. We think we can do that, but it's going to require the public, I think in particular the business community in the local areas, to engage as a critical friend of education and be supportive. But pizzas and pencils do not change productivity. And what a lot of businesses want to do, and it's completely understandable, is have the teacher appreciation lunch or something like that. There's nothing wrong in that. That's a good thing, but it doesn't change behavior. It's like feeding alligators. When you feed alligators, you don't change their behavior. You just get fat alligators. So we think that the public needs to be informed. We think we need to have an honest accountability system, which we have not had in Texas. 2 years ago, the Texas Education Agency said that 70% of the campuses in Texas were either exemplary or recognized. I don't think anybody who looks at the numbers can believe those numbers to be correct. And then the communities and the business people in those communities are told, well, TEA says our campus here, our high school is exemplary, in spite of the fact that they're not doing the deal in terms of producing the numbers. It just doesn't work. Now, currently, House Bill 3, which passed 2 years ago, not 3 years ago, we think it is and will be a very dramatic tool for improving accountability, because it's going to turn the system into figuring out what percentage of students are either on track or graduating career or college ready, which is the basic core mission of the schools. But one of those standards that's being used is the end of course exams. This spring, ninth graders in Texas in 4 core courses will take state-developed end-of-course exams. And the law says that 15% of the grade, 15% of the grade must be determined by the score on the end-of-course exam, and that the passing is 70%. Currently, the Texas Education Agency is refusing to issue any guidelines whatsoever as to what that means. So therefore, the school districts are all over the map in terms of what they're doing with regard to how they calculate the score. We know some of the districts have come up with a scheme which will totally turn the test into a total waste of money. All the millions of dollars that have been spent developing the test, what they are going to do, they're going to say if a kid gets between 0 and 69, they get a 69 for the purpose of calculating the 15%. Now think about that for a minute. If you are, of course we have 2 boys and a girl, so I have a good reference. We had the girl who, regardless of the grading scheme, would go in there, study, work hard, and do her best to score high on the test. And then we have 2 boys. Now they've graduated from college, they're doing fine, but their attitude towards academics, how shall I say, was somewhat more lackadaisical than the female side of the house. And they never experienced any academic anxiety during their career because everything was always fine. So these 2 guys would have figured out what the deal is. So if you're sliding into the final exam with a 72 cumulative average, and you know that if you get a 0 on that test, it's going to count as a 69, and you're going to get a 71.5. So what's going to happen? They're going to walk into the test room, they're going to take the test, they're going to write their name across the top, and they're going to hand it back in and get a 0, proving absolutely nothing. And then on the flip side, between 70 and 100, they're going to count it as 100. So our little darling daughter who goes in and works hard and gets a 98 on the test, her grade is not going to improve her position any more than the kid who gets a 71. It's basically wrong. I mean, it's unfair to the kids. And to me, it's unconscionable that the agency is not issuing any guidelines as to how this is to be done. It's also more so unconscionable that districts are taking advantage of this to game the system to no one's benefit, where the test will have no value whatsoever. We think guidelines should be issued. We think a pretty common sense approach is that you take the 1 semester grade, you take the other semester grade, you take the final exam, you mix them together, with the final grade counting 15%. and you come up with a grade. And we met with the School Boards Association's representatives and the Superintendent's Association, and they say we have no guidelines. As a matter of fact, school boards put out some guidelines on it, and the commissioner said that there were some errors in it, and they withdrew it. And, you know, think about it. If you're a principal or a superintendent and your next-door neighbor's school, the next-door ISD, comes up with this scheme, you're going to be pushed to do it because if you're honest, you're going to look a lot worse than the neighbor. It's unfair, it's wrong, it's a waste of money, and it doesn't get us where we need to be. Now, at the higher education level, we need to do a much better job on completions. If you go to completecollege.org, you can get an individualized study of Texas. Austin Community College, which has about 40,000 kids, and only about 2,200 of them are full-time students seeking an associate's degree. But of the kids who show up at the door and self-identify as wanting an associate's degree, only 4% graduate in 3 years. And for the 4-year institutions, it's somewhere around a third. So last session, we worked with the coordinating board and the Texas, what's now called the Texas Business Leadership Council, to try to bring some outcomes-based funding. In other words, just 10% of their money based on how well they do on completions and how well they do on the increase in completions. We think that they should do it, and we hope the legislature will take advantage of this opportunity and impose this system on them that benefits them, that we know they can meet the goals of getting us an educated workforce. Also, very quickly, remedial education. One thing I didn't mention is half the kids who graduate from high school in Texas, when they show up at a community college, they have to take remedial, or now called developmental courses. The performance of these courses is pitiful. And that's just not me, that's Raymond Paredes, Commissioner of Higher Education in Texas. We've got to hold all of these institutions, K-12, community colleges, and 4-year institutions, and we've got to increase their productivity. The taxpayers are not getting a return on the investment. But the real tragedy is the students who go, spend a lot of money, wind up with a lot of debt, and get nothing in return. And the jobs will not be here in Texas in the future if we do not have a skilled workforce. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Bill. Now we have Ms. Cindy Ramos Davidson to come and speak with you.
I need to get through that. Well, thank you very much. I drove all the way here. I had to be at a Dallas Federal Reserve Bank Board meeting yesterday in Dallas, so I think I know every pit stop along the way from El Paso to here. So we have one big state, I have to tell you. I'm glad to live in Texas because I hate to fly, so driving is a good thing. I get to be the commercial today, so I brought a few of these fun little things because I'm going to put you all on the hot seat, as they say. These are tortilla warmers to show you about what small minority women-owned business, not only in a border community but across the state, is going to need to do to survive coming 2012. These are tortilla warmers. The company that made these is a Ability One company in our market called Ready One. They work primarily with young adults and older adults who have disabilities. Primary focus that they do is they make the military suits for the military, but they're also having to look at ways to diversify what they're doing as a manufacturing company, and so they have gone into doing these little tortilla warmers. They also do shredding, they do other things, so I have a few here. I think James said that if you raise your hand, he will pass them out and put you on the hot seat while I give my presentation. So there's a few there. They really do work. They're great for other things, too.
And I thought I was going to get to toss them out like that.
Never asked the good question.
I know I was going to do that, but I thought maybe I'd get thrown out and wouldn't be asked to come back. But there we go. Okay, great. I wanted to give you just some stats real quick. These are the newest stats that we just got from the Federal Reserve Bank board meeting that I just came from. But I did want to point out I'm glad to see our representative from District 78, Representative Dee Margo, is in the audience. Hi, Dee. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. Texas Economic Update. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, the Texas employment grew 2.1% in 2011, adding about 197,200 jobs. 256,100 of those jobs were private sector jobs. They expect similar growth in 2012. Faster growth, of course, if national and global economies pick up. I'm sorry? Private sector jobs were 256,100 private sector jobs. Texas employment growth is still the best in the nation. So everywhere I go across the country, when I go talk to other chambers with the U.S., I say the best place to be is Texas, hands down. So the numbers certainly show that. They also showed that government layoffs are still abating in the state of Texas, with Texas government with the highest number of loss in jobs as it relates to government jobs lost. And they basically attributed the jobs lost in the education arena. Not a good thing. The other thing that I wanted to share with you before we go into my presentation is the fact that most of what we're hearing at the Federal Reserve is the economy will get better, but it's going to be slow. Small business is a little more optimistic about what's happening in the country as it relates to growth of their company. They recognize that they are the ones that are going to save the world. They really are. They're the ones that create the jobs. But bottom line, if we don't get thrown out of here, they just need government to stay out of their business and let business do what they know how to do, and that's create jobs. It is a no-brainer. And that means keep government out of business at a local, state, federal, regional, and national level. I mean, it's not rocket scientist. It's pretty simplistic. Everywhere I go across the country, whether it's in Texas or whether I go anyplace else, it's what I hear consistently from the market that we work with. So I hope I get asked to come back sometime. I brought presents, so that should do it for me. We did a profile of the small business owner in terms of characteristics and see if some of this fits some of you that are in the audience. I come from an entrepreneurial background. I've been doing chamber work for over 35 years. I know I look like I'm 29. What can I say? I started in the Albuquerque market. I grew up in El Paso, Texas, went to college and high school. And I love doing what I do. There's nothing like having to work with small business and watch an idea going to fruition, to implementation, to someday being a big company. It's just very rewarding. As I've started working with small businesses over the years, though, these are some of the characteristics I see. They still feel alone and lack resources. How many in the audience can say that's the case? They are concerned with issues affecting their day-to-day operation. They're not breathing and living their business 24/7, then they don't need to be an entrepreneur. They need to see and have value, understanding, and accessibility, and they're always busy working in their business as opposed to on their business. I see that a lot. I see a lot of small businesses so busy trying to make the widget, get the widget to the market, work with employees, all the rules, taxes, regulations, they don't have time to step back and work on their business to look maybe how to diversify their people, how to diversify their product, or how to diversify their service because they're so busy working in it to try to make payroll, they don't have the resources by which to do the other. We also have seen what are the needs of the small business owner. Small business owner wants to know how better to compete for customers. Without customers, they don't have a valued business. How to hire and retain good employees. This is critical, ties back to the education component that is still a very critical component. We have surveyed a lot of our employers in our marketplace, and basics, reading, writing, arithmetic, compiling letters, composing a letter, being able to add on a calculator as opposed to having the machine do it for you. God forbid if electricity went out in a retail store, they wouldn't be able to add the numbers to be able to give the tax because technology has made things very easy for people, that the old school days of a pencil and paper are not there anymore, and that is a challenge for many of our retail type businesses. Where to find affordable health insurance. I'm sure you hear that all the time. What they need to keep up with technology and advanced business practices, and how to navigate through the maze of taxes, licensing, and all the permits required at the local, state, and federal level. What do small business owners really want? Advice and counseling from organizations and individuals that take the time to understand their business. Local help that is convenient. Access to key trends in the marketplace. User-friendly tips and how-tos and best practices across the state. Personal contact with other entrepreneurs. One-on-one entrepreneurial technical advice with key industry experts, and referrals to other businesses who have broken the barrier of default. We did a recent sampling survey in our market, and we also did it among other chambers across the state. And we asked, what would be the perfect gift three gifts for your business going into 2012 because it was holiday season and Christmas. So we sent out 5,000 of these surveys on an online survey, and we got 4,752 back. That's not bad. 4,752, not bad. So 45% of them want to decrease business taxation. That's a no-brainer. 40% no health care reform. 50% want better business tax credits. 80%, of course, better economy. 30% want more government contracting. Proud to say that our chamber is the only chamber in the state of Texas that's certified to do state hub certification. So we really watch the contracting component. 35% want to hire more employees, and then 35% want loan approval money to grow your business. Interesting to know that there is money in the banks, but the banks don't have any loan activity. Businesses aren't going to the banks and asking for money. So you need to go to your bank. You need to go ask for money because they have it. They're quite capitalized. What do you hope to accomplish or change in your business this coming year? 45% want to be able to hire or retrain more employees. 45% want to expand their business with new locations. 50% want to diversify their business in terms of their product and their service to better work on their business as opposed to in it. 35% want to restructure their business plan. 40% want to revamp their marketing strategy. And 30% want to be able to secure a business loan to be able to buy capital equipment to be able to do something different within their company. As we headed into the holiday season, we asked them, did they experience an improvement in their business or business conditions compared to last year? Yes, business has increased or improved from last year. 29.4% said that. No, business is worse than last year. 35.3% responded to that one. And I have experienced no change from last year. 35.3% responded to that. We also asked them, what areas of recent legislation do you think will have the most impact on your business? 17.6% said Texas Back to Work initiative. 52.9% small business tax exemption, 47.1% health care reform, 29.4% unemployment insurance, and 11.8% workers' compensation. So I think that's important for our policy individuals to keep in mind as they go forward. Today's realities, some of the things that we're seeing is our nation's businesses have changed drastically. Over the years and today you will see aggressive entrepreneurial sectors driven by 5 but very different independent economic engines. Something that was interesting at the Dallas Fed meeting was the gentleman that was speaking to us referenced that he'd had a suit on and he'd had it for 20 years. Nobody noticed that his suit was 20 years old. If he hadn't told you, we wouldn't have known his suit was 20 years old. And then he pulls out his cell phone. And he has a flip phone. He doesn't have an iPhone. He doesn't have an Android. He has a flip phone. Immediately, he said, people in the airport said, hey, guy, you got to get with it. Your phone's too old. But nobody said anything to him about his 20-year-old suit. So what does that tell you about what we have to do as small business owners and entrepreneurial individuals who support them is you've got to start thinking about doing your business very differently. And you've got to be able to incorporate all types of people, process, and ideas to be able to stay ahead of the curve, or you'll be like that 20-year-old suit. Some of the engines we're looking at are information technology, social media, which we know about, federal and state governments, bioscience and medicine, tourism and hospitality, and professional and specialty services. These are some of the things that we're seeing in terms of growth sectors going from here on out. Small businesses, new markets, customers, and opportunities. Small businesses can be more flexible. Small businesses are the real risk takers. Small businesses adapt easier to change in the marketplace. Small businesses have high creativity skills. Small businesses have key multitasking capabilities. And small businesses are the key nucleus of economic viability and at the core of our nation's economy. So anybody who's out there that's a policy person, please, when you're making these decisions, pull your small business people in your market together. Let them talk to you. They need to give you their input. They've got the best ideas. Thanks for the opportunity.
Now we'll hear from the Representative John Davis.
Thank you, Chairman Heflin. Before I get to my prepared text, I'm just going to comment on some of Cindy's comments. And course, the importance of small businesses and what they matter to us is that's what as citizen legislators, we come here with different skill sets and different backgrounds. And as mine has been a small business owner, it's through my whole life as a 25-year-old, starting a roofing company, becoming a small business owner. And then in 2002, I sold the business and created a little metal decking company. And as I started chairing my small business and economic development committee, Lori McAnally told me that the typical small businesses, some study was out, all these studies, is 3.8 employees. So I went through the calculation of my little metal decking company. I sell metal decking, bar joists in the construction industry. And I realized I have Jerry, who's my inside salesman. I've got Reagan, who's my outside salesman. And I have Chewy, who runs the forklift, and my IT guy and does everything. And then the 0.8 was me. So I figured it out. So I'm typical small business, 3.8 employees. Also, just to a little bit of what Chairman Heflin was saying. In 2003, I served on the Appropriations Committee whenever we had that $10 billion shortfall, and I was thrown into the middle of the Health and Human Service aspect of that, and that was ground zero of the budget. So a lot of my work has been on Health and Human Services. So to me, it was an important transition when I started chairing the Economic and Small Business Development Committee to bring that skill set of being a small business owner as well as chairing, working on the Health and Human Service issues. Because the quickest way out of poverty is to have a job. And the best way is to have the right economic environment to create jobs. And so when Chairman Heflin asked me to speak on this, how do we create jobs in the state of Texas, my first response was, well, Chairman Heflin, that's easy. We can take care of that in November of this year, have a dramatic impact on the economy. Now, he said, no, John, you need to go a little bit more depth than that. I said, okay, I'll do that. Just comment real quick society has a perception of those who work with their hands or technical or they don't go to college that they're not as smart as a group of folks, and that is a societal issue. I think and that's a society's perception. And one story, whenever I decided when I was 25 that I was going to become a roofer. After graduating from college, I decided to be a roofer. My dad, who's an attorney, said, well, John, you know your socioeconomic status has just dropped about 3 rungs on the ladder. I said, that's okay, But it's kind of the perception folks have if you work with your hands, technical issues, skills training, that's not the same as getting your four-year education or getting your doctorate or master's. But they're very needed services, and they're growing, and the demand is high and needs to. Anyway, let me go to the prepared words that I had for the group is while there are many important components to job creation, ensuring that our citizens are equipped with all the skill sets that employers are looking for should be near the top of our list. I believe that, especially in the current economic climate, one of our focus for our state should be improving our skills development programs. Continued economic growth demands a constant supply of skilled manpower. And education is critical to that, as Mr. Hammond has pointed out, but also I believe it goes beyond receiving the high school or even college degree. We must be flexible enough to keep up with an ever-changing world economy and the new technologies. Skill development requires collaboration between businesses, community and technical colleges, and local workforce development boards and as our economic development partners. Businesses within our states need to identify their training needs and the number of employees that need training. Cooperation between the business community and the Texas Workforce Commission will allow businesses to gain a more highly trained workforce, workers to upgrade their skills, and the Texas economy to become strengthened. There's a great example of this collaboration that's taken place in my Clear Lake House District. You all are aware of what's going on with NASA, with all the massive the layoffs that are taking place with the manned space flight. These changes have created a real time of uncertainty in NASA, and we have led to hundreds of layoffs at the Johnson Space Center. In an effort to preserve the invaluable brain trust that has been centered around Johnson Space Center and its role in the space program, an entity 501c3 was created called Baytech. This group is working to ensure that the highly trained NASA workers stay in the area and that Johnson Space Center continues to function as a leader in research and innovation despite the ongoing changes at the federal level. The Texas Workforce Commission is working with their local businesses and economic development groups to help those former NASA employees translate their skills into the private sector jobs, not only in the aerospace industry, but in the oil and gas industry. Another way for people to get jobs is to invest their time in learning new skills required by our manufacturing sector. Speaker Strauss has charged every committee member to study and make recommendations for significantly improving the manufacturing and high-tech capabilities. Manufacturing jobs are good jobs, and they have the capability of bolstering the middle class, a group that has taken a huge hit over the past few years as the recession's begun. For the most part, these jobs require special skills, and they do end up paying very good jobs. Technological advances in manufacturing have led to a decline in prices of manufactured goods, resulting in manufacturers contributing to a higher standard of living for American consumers. But in addition to productivity, manufacturing has a key role in driving innovation and technology. For American manufacturing, the future increasingly lies with the rapidly changing fields such as energy, medical devices, transportation, and aerospace. Texas is already uniquely positioned to excel in several of these areas, including aerospace and energy. As the home of the largest medical center in the world, I believe we have a leg up on other states in the medical and health sciences arena. Innovation and productivity are crucial to becoming our footings in today's global economy, and the legislature needs to do what it can to encourage our state as we move forward. There are other reasons to support manufacturing: quality control, avoiding intellectual property theft by other countries, and the ability of society to make its own goods. Being dependent on other countries to make things for us makes me uneasy, and I would rather have those jobs here in America, and especially here in Texas. Another way we can work to increase manufacturing jobs in our state is by maintaining a stable and predictable regulatory environment that fosters certainty. Come to mind the EPA. In 2001, Texas was named one of the 15 states whose state employment policies made it favorable for new job creation. This report was done by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, found that states that adhered most closely to federal standards and did not enact many additional regulations had the most favorable business climate for attracting new business and creation of jobs. We must strive to maintain our state's reputation as a good place to do business. People are moving to Texas because Texans are able to keep more of their paychecks, and they spend that money right here in Texas. As those dollars flow into the state coffers through sales tax, the state has money to spend on our public education, working on a water plant infrastructure, research incentives, which help to create more jobs. While it's true that the policies of the federal government have a direct and huge impact on our economic environment of the entire country, state legislators have the ability to influence regulatory matters with each of their states. State policies matter in terms of which states prosper and which states fall behind in the race for jobs and economic growth. The policy blunders that hurt growth the most are high income tax rates, forced union work rules, heavy regulation, unfunded public pensions and health plans, poorly performing schools, and litigation that invites expensive and frivolous lawsuits. One policy change that we need to take a look at is restoring the sales tax exemption for the purchase of equipment used in our research and development. The policies we set at a state level have real consequences, and we live in a world where we are competing for capital, jobs, and brain power. And we are not just competing against other states, but we are also against many other countries around the world that want to come after our jobs. I believe the best approach is one that seeks to encourage growth by providing the best economic climate for folks to live, work, and do their business. This approach, it keeps regulations at a minimum, keeps taxes low, and generally tries to keep government out of your life. My committee was given 7 charges to study in the interim as we prepare for the 83rd legislative session. We've already had 2 hearings, one at NASA back in December, and we're having another one January 26th, where we'll be discussing our state's economic clusters. Other topics that we've been asked to look into is the Emerging Tech Fund, the impact of research at state universities, and how to expedite the commercialization of that research into the marketplace. Also, and the state's efforts to encourage new business growth and retain existing businesses. Each of these charges play a part in the topic we are discussing today, and we want to get your input. You don't have to testify before the committee to be heard. Feel free that you can submit testimony or your input to Lori McAnally. She's the committee clerk for our committee, and she will be very active in writing our interim report. You can go online or get with Lori. I believe Lori's here now. Where are you, Lori? Lori, raise your hand there. There you go. Lori's chairing is the committee clerk, and we're going to, it's online, as a testimony that comes before our committee is there. We want you to engage, submit your comments. If you have studies that you think that we need to be looking at or data that would be helpful on job creation, things we can do better, feed it to Lori. We'll take that information, part of the report that will be submitted as we turn in before the next legislative session. As many of you know, a lot of those interim reports are used for the basis for legislation for next session. So as we move forward, get that information there, participate in the process, and have your voice heard. And we look forward to working with Texas Public Policy Foundation in the future, as we have in the past, and the foundations and principles that we all adhere to. And as Cindy Ramos says, it ain't that complicated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take a moment, and if the panelists have any comments to make based on what they heard the others say, or just something you may have come to mind you want to say, I'll take a moment and let you do that now, or have a question of the other panelists, if you will.
I would just say that in regard to Chairman Davis's remark, I thought he was unbelievably brilliant and forthright in his remarks, and that we appreciate all his hard work.
I can tell you've been a legislator before.
All right. We will now start the time where we hear from you, or where you get a chance to have your voice heard. If you will, wait till the mic gets to you before you start talking. We'll take the question here first.
Bill, I was one of your TAB members in San Antonio and had the privilege of being a president of the San Antonio chapter for a short time. And Ms. Davidson, I want to echo, as a small business person in San Antonio, built a business up, ground up, national and international. You're right. Our biggest problem was not our competitors, which we have many, 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 but it was interference by government, and at all levels. And so my question to Bill or John, whoever, is what are you doing at the state level, legislative-wise, to eliminate as much of this frustration? It seems to get worse and worse. What are we doing? What are you doing to help the small business to take these impediments away?
I'll just, it's. We heard General Abbott speaking today for the breakfast meeting, and I think it's that we just have to remain diligent at that and stand up for every time we see a wrong where small businesses are being impeded. There's overreaching of the EPA or a regulation or putting the nose that impedes small businesses. We've got to stand up for it and do what we can on the state level to make policy changes. And a lot of those ideas that come up that where businesses are being impeded or small businesses are having issues, it's fortunate I'm a small business owner, so I'm out there every day. I've got my line of credit. I've got to work on that. I've got to submit my reports, and I do my collections, and have to deal with different regulations that come into play. But it's important to get that feedback from the different business owners, different members. to us, to your state rep, to your state senator, to communicate where problems are arising, to articulate those and get your voice heard. That is how this democratic republic works, is for us to get there and get to action and change policy what we can on the state level. And it does get frustrating on the federal level. Has such an impact on what happens to us as well, that your voice has to be heard as well to make those changes. But I think we can't let up and get frustrated. As I was telling Chairman Heflin, I get angry and I get very frustrated because it's just not that complicated. You want an environment for economic growth. You want an environment where you can make your widgets or make your tortilla warmers or sell your metal decking or sell your fiberglass panels, and because that's where we succeed. But it's when you have policies that are trying to change things, it's to me I get frustrated, but I'll leave it like that. But we just need to remain diligent and keep pushing the envelope and stand up for free market enterprise.
And I would aid in that, and I'd
Amen.
like to see more business people come up here and advocate their positions.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, our members, our leadership has told us to focus more on Washington. I mean, we're going to maintain our level of activity here, but we're also going to, we've hired a Washington, D.C. lobbyist. Most of the pain and suffering emanates from Washington, not from Austin, thanks to the leadership of men like Chairman Davis and Chairman Heflin, his many years of service. I mean, you think about the range of issues. I mean, just repealing Obamacare, I think that alone would have an enormous impact on the business climate and hiring, because people are not hiring because of that, because they can't figure it out and they have no idea what the horrors to come as a result of that legislation. And then just look at what the EPA is doing in terms of the cross-state rule, which is now being held in abeyance by the courts. But electric plants are being shut down for some rule where they totally violated the process, and there's no other than one model to show one or two instances of some possible to the north impact. It makes no sense whatsoever, and we're facing real problems next summer as a result of that.
Right back here.
My question is, how do all of you have spoken about skilled labor, and at least in our area, we use a lot of skilled labor. I'm in the oil and gas industry in the Midland, West Texas area. Yet we, at the high school level, continue to push all our education towards a college preparatory degree, and yet we kind of look down on the skilled labor, and I think we've got to make a change in how we go about allowing those that want to be into skilled labor and not go into college preparatory. We're sitting there needing more skilled labor in our area, and we can't get it. And yet our skilled labor can make more money today than our college kids coming out with debt. What's going on is absolutely ridiculous by not allowing more young people that want to go into skilled labor and being able to look up to that situation as a way to be successful. And at the high school level, we seem to talk that down, and I think there's got to be a change.
And I echo that, and that's where it goes back to just kind of with my dad jokingly. I told him I was going to be in the roofing business, and it's a society issue that if you work with your hands, if you're a sheet metal mechanic, if you're a pipe fitter, if you're a plumber, or electrician, our society has said that you're not up there, and that's wrong. And I don't know it's where that has come from, because so many of the craftsmen, people who've worked with their hands, they become business owners. Guys who are able to become a roofer, and they work their way up and own their own roofing company, or become a technician and work their way up and have their own businesses. But it's a societal issue. But I think we need to keep. But also the parents have that same. I want my baby to go to college. I want my child to go to college. Because that's the perception that that's the only way you're going to be successful. but it's a lot of work to do it, and it's I don't know the exact answer, but I think we need to keep monies available for transition after high school, because the kids are dropping out because they don't find high school relevant. When you're at age 16, why am I here? I mean, you're not learning a skill, but that needs to be changed, and we'll let you take it.
I'm just going to give you an idea. We're just launched this year, and we've been working on it all of last year. We are in the process of getting it completed so that we can franchise it and get it out to the country. Is a program called the Empire Builders, Jóvenes Empresarios. It is a young entrepreneur, young worker program designed for the 40 and under individual. It is designed to match a current person working in any industry with another person and do a mentorship program so that it can address two things, the skilled labor issue as well as creating the next generation of young entrepreneurs. We'll be happy to share that with you in a couple of weeks. We're getting ready to do our first one on the 19th of this month and roll that out with 25. It's sold out. We've got about another 30 that would like to get into the program. I think business and industry has to be the ones to come to the table, working with the policy analysts to get this done, because it is a critical problem. I heard that a truck driver could make $5,000 sign-on bonus and do $100,000 in Pearsall, Texas, driving a truck. I mean, that's more money than anybody coming out of college right now trying to find a job.
Got one right here.
So I'd like to go back briefly to Bill's comments about accountability in education. I came down here from Indiana yesterday to talk on another panel. And for all the things that our state has not done well, I think one of the things we decided to do, which will bear some fruit, is we decided from the accountability standpoint, we're going to grade schools A to F. You know, you mentioned the categories that TEA assigns to folks, and the question I would ask is, if you would walk down to a parent on the street that has kids in school, would that parent have any idea what those categories mean?
Well, no. And not only do they not have any idea what the categories mean, but they're false because they're giving them outrageously high. I mean, recognized or exemplary. I mean, I suggested somewhat sarcastically, I know that would be hard for some of the audience to believe, but that the banner that's over the school that says we're exemplary, because 16% of our ninth graders graduate career or college ready in the same style, size print as the word exemplary part. It's a completely phony system in Texas. And now, Hope Springs Eternal, passage of House Bill 3, and now the agency is allowing the end of course to be completely meaningless by not issuing any directives as to how it should be calculated. So here we go again. I mean, you know, I would hope that some legislators who are sitting in this room might want to question the commissioner about why he's not doing something about saying what any common sense approach would say about the 15% rule. It's being obliterated. So here we go. And, you know, at the community college level, I mean, the numbers are atrocious, and all the educators just argue with the numbers. Even if you double the numbers at some of the numbers that I cited, or triple the numbers that I cited, the performance is not necessary. We need to take a mind shift and hold these institutions accountable, and the most important part of that process is to have an honest accountability system. We do not have it. I applaud Indiana and Mitch Daniels for what you all have done up there. I mean, you are, you know, in the top tier in terms of accomplishing some of these things.
Question back in the corner there.
Yes, I believe there's 9 districts or in the state of Texas that the TEDC is separated, the regions, and was just curious what kind of area development studies or what kind of materials do y'all typically use when trying to attract new industry from out of state or just, you know, collaborate?
Is that for me or?
I mean,
I'm not really familiar enough with it. We don't do economic development. So, you know, we do the business climate, so I'm not knowledgeable enough to answer. Maybe Cindy knows.
I have your card. I'll send you what we do, and then you can use it as a model, because we do have a checklist of what we're looking for, what the industry, you know, availability is, what the industry can hold, what the industry can or cannot do, and I'll send you the target areas.
Down here on the front.
Thank you, Chairman. First, a tongue-in-cheek response. As the Chairman Tolman shows, I moved here from Illinois last year, and as much as we're complaining about some problems here, let me give you a Midwestern thing. If you talk about Milwaukee or Detroit, 25% of the kids graduate from high school, and according to tests, half of them are functionally illiterate. The advantage Texas has is how bad the other guys are. In Chicago, they're bragging because the dropout rate's now under 50%. They're 50.2 graduating, the same test scores, so half are functionally illiterate even though they graduate. But that's cynical. The advantage is how bad the composition is. But two things, some things a bunch of Chicago teachers told me when I worked with them. One was saying, and in lots, but paraphrasing one, I got 35 kids in my class. This is not a problem. I got 5 armed gangbangers in my class. That is my problem. If you get the 5 out, I can teach the other 30. 10 will sleep and the other 20 will work at learning something. Somewhere within the state government system, we have got to set up a system that says we cannot let the couple of disruptors destroy the life of the other 20, 30 kids who want to learn. And I know it's bad to say, well, we're going to lose the 5. Yeah, but we're going to save the 30. Somehow we've got to deal with that issue. And in Chicago, we tried to deal with it and failed miserably. They just were unwilling. But we came up with an idea. My brother and I had a foundation, and we were Chicago Teachers Union blocked us. It never happened. But we looked at developing charter schools that essentially the curriculums were established by essentially business groups. Now, Paul Vallis, who was the school superintendent before Arnie Duncan, and believe it or not, both of them were pretty good school superintendents, both favored it. They could never get it past the teachers union. But we essentially were developing curriculums for career opportunities, and that they would become charter schools. And again, the parents loved it, a lot of kids loved it, the business groups loved it, the teachers union hated it. But those are ideas that we tried that had potential. But I tell you, until you get the thugs out of the classroom, they're going to intimidate the little kids. And little kids can't learn when the thugs are intimidating them. And that's an issue we're going to have to deal with because a kid can't get a job skill when he's scared to go to class.
Right here.
Cindy, I heard what you said, that I think you said the banks have money.
They do.
Really? They do have money, but they won't lend it to anybody. And if you're a small business owner here and you can relate to that, give me a shout out. I talk to small business owners all over the place, vendors, people that I sell to, people that buy from me. We can't get loans. And part of the problem at the federal level where you can help us is, number one, Dodd-Frank. Number two, stress testing the banks all the time. All it does is it causes them to want to be more liquid and hold more cash on hand because they're afraid of getting stress tested. They don't want the exposure because they'll get shut down. I have a 775 credit rating. I have no debt. No debt. And I had a hard time finally because I knew someone that was the chief loan officer at a bank. It's the only reason I was able to buy property with the building on it, and I had 30% down on it, and I got it at a 20% premium. It's next to impossible right now for the average small business person to get money.
That's one of the things I tell the feds all the time. In fact, we laugh because I am not a banker. I'm a small business person, and I said, "You want me to be what on a banking group?" Because they need to hear what you just said and what I tell them all the time. The challenge is Dodd-Frank has created major issues for the entire financial industry. Compliance is unbelievable with the banks right now. They have to hire compliance officers to be able to meet with the requirements of the Dodd-Frank. So they're getting squeezed big time as well. However, in defense of the banks, there is liquidity out there, but you've got to be the type of individual that does not give up when you get no, because you're going to get no.
I didn't know it was 6 different.
And if you have to go to 16 different, you will get them. You need to be able to leverage your relationship with your banker. It's one of the things we talked about that business does not do a real good job sometimes, is creating that one-on-one relation. Even though you have it and they say no, go back. Even though you go back with something else, go back again and continue to be consistent because they need to lend money. They've got it. And they're all fighting right now in terms of finding good bankable loans. They're a little gun shy as well, so they're not taking as many risks as they used to. But you can get the money if you just keep being persistent. If you run into a problem, take my card and call me. Let me know where you're at. I'll give you some names of some other people. Most of your community banks are the ones that are doing most of the lending than your larger financial institutions, as I'm sure you're well aware of.
on the difference there, community banks versus the other, what's?
Well, community banks are usually shareholders and stakeholders and investors in the local market, like 20, 40, 50 business people come together, they put their money together, they invest it, and they create a community bank, as opposed to a large corporation like a Bank of America or Wells Fargo that's on a national level. And so most of the money they lend is in the local community more than it is outside. There's a cap from a community bank in terms of how much they will lend. It depends on how that bank is structured, but they are the ones that are lending most of the money right now.
One right here, and be very quick if you will. We got 1 minute before we have to go to commercial.
All right, sure, no problem. I want to tap back on what the gentleman said back here from Midland. In my district where I'm at, VOTEC education is a big issue. The fact that we've done away with it. They don't want to see it wait to be a transition from high school to community colleges filling that role. We would argue that 50% of the Hispanics that are dropping out are really smart kids because they realize they're not going to college and they might as well get on with their life. We need to be able to teach them a skill, and I would say Washington and Austin do not know what those skills are for that local area. In Nacona, Texas, it's leather working so they can make boots. In Bridgeport, Texas, it's oil and gas, and in Munster, Texas, it's CNC machine working. We need to get VOTEC education back in there, figure out how we're going to do accountability and testing for those that go there. I understand some parents want their little kids to go to college. Hey, I guarantee you half of them don't. They want their kids to have a career where they can make a living, and they realize they can make more money than somebody coming out with a 4-year, $100,000, $200,000 in debt with a sociology degree that can't find a job. So we need more welders, we need more oil and gas guys and truck drivers as well. So we need to find a way to get that back into high school, and will help immensely, one, with jobs, and also, two, with the dropout rate.
I think that's with your local workforce boards that we have around the state, is to provide that information back, that feedback of what the local communities need, because that's where those local workforce boards, that's their job, is to work with the work on the skills development funds, where it's needed for each particular area. But you're right, the kids are coming out of college with debt, and 75% of them can't find a job. And it's much better, you have all this hydrofracking drilling in the Eagle Ford and Barnett Shale, and it's booming. There's so many opportunities and jobs that pay good money, and that's where the focus needs to be.
I have a couple of announcements to make, but before I make them, if you would help me thank the panel. Okay, please take time to fill out the evaluation form that was in your chair. And then the last thing is that the next panel in this room will be Texas school funding. How much is enough? Thank you all very much for being with us this morning.
Nice to see you again. I'll take my tortilla warmer.